perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work? Purport. Fruitive work, which has perpetually engaged the living being, is compared to the banyan tree in the Bhagavad Gita. For it is certainly very deeply rooted. As long as the propensity for enjoying the fruit of work is there, one has to continue the transmigration of the soul from one body or place to another, according to one's nature of work. The propensity for enjoyment may be turned into the desire for serving the mission of the Lord. By doing so, one's activity is changed into karma yoga, or the way by which one can attain spiritual perfection while engaging in the work for which he has a natural tendency. Here the word Atma indicates the categories of all fruitive work. The conclusion is that when the result of all fruitive and other work is dovetailed with the service of the Lord, it will cease to generate further karma and will gradually develop into transcendental devotional service, which will not only cut off completely the root of the banyan tree of work, but will also carry the performer to the lotus feet of the Lord. The summary is that one has to, first of all, seek the association of pure devotees, who not only are learned in the Vedanta, but are self-realized souls and unalloyed devotees of Lord Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. In that association, the neophyte devotees must render loving service physically and mentally without reservation. This service attitude will induce the great souls to be more favorable in bestowing their mercy, which injects the neophyte with all the transcendental qualities of the pure devotees. Gradually, this is developed into a strong attachment to hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, which makes him able to catch up the constitutional position of the gross and subtle bodies, and beyond them, the knowledge of pure soul and his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. After the realization is ascertained by establishment of the eternal relation, pure devotional service to the Lord begins gradually developing into perfect knowledge of the personality of Godhead beyond the purview of impersonal Brahman and localized Paramatma. By such Purushottam Yoga, as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, one is made perfect even during the present corporal existence, and one exhibits all the good qualities of the Lord to the highest percentage. Such is the gradual development by association of pure devotees. Om Ajnana-timiranda Shajananjanan Salakaya Chakchu Militam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Maha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the service of the Lord, those very activities which caused his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. So Srila Prabhupada is so clearly and expertly explaining this process of devotional service and the association of pure advanced devotees and how that can help us become free from this bondage in the material world. Generally speaking, neophyte devotees are not very expert at balancing the various aspects of their lives with reference to devotional service. So the expert guidance of an advanced devotee is very important. We know from Bhagavad Gita, text 34, chapter 4, Tadvidi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas taddarshina. So one should try to learn the truth And that means all truth, not just the spiritual truth, but all truth, by approaching the spiritual master and inquiring submissively. So one could argue that, well, I'm not able to directly communicate with my spiritual master. What should I do in that circumstance? I'm just listening to Srila Prabhupada's lecture this morning in Tokyo, and he's telling the devotees, don't bring all the questions to me. And he explained very carefully what he meant by that. He said, first you go to your temple president, and then if you can't satisfy there, then you go to the director, regional director. And then finally, if you cannot satisfy, then you come to me. He said, it's not good that you always come to me. Go to those who are advanced devotees who understand. See, so he said, therefore, the leaders must be conversant in this philosophy. The leaders in our ISKCON society from all levels should be conversant with the philosophy. Conversant doesn't necessarily mean being a scholar. It doesn't necessarily mean that you know 100 verses or 200 verses by memory. But you should know where the information is in Srila Prabhupada's books. That's actually very important. To be familiar with Srila Prabhupada's books, his purports especially, and be able to go to that for guidance. We're not here for some popularity contest, who's the best and who's the most erudite, none of that. But in order to sustain and maintain our own devotional service, we have to be conversant with this philosophy and to be prepared at any moment, as they say, the drop of a hat, to be able to explain what you know, what you understand, and what you don't understand, be humble and sincere about that, and then try to find it. Like it says in Bhagavad Gita, which is 18th chapter, I don't know the exact number, but samo dhammastapasaucham shantyam arjavam evacha jnana vijnana astikam brahma karma sabhavajam. So this gyan, knowledge, which we get that by studying Srila Prabhupada's books specifically, especially, and then applying what we've heard, and then getting the wisdom, the understanding. That solidifies our faith. The faith cannot be casual. We just casually go about our devotional life. It cannot be like that. It has to be very specific. We have to be scrutinizingly studying these books carefully. Srila Prabhupada said this morning, every word we should try to understand carefully. As he said, if someone asks you, for instance, he gave the example of devotees selling the books. So he said, if someone says, are you reading this book? And he says specifically, someone says, did you read this verse? Do you know this verse? And then the person says, and Prabhupada was kind of joking. He said, I just sell the books. I'm just selling them. I don't really read them. So Prabhupada said, that is not good. We should study them very carefully as if our very life depends on this information, not casually. If you're in the middle of the ocean and you're drowning, you don't casually try to save yourself. You frantically try to save yourself. You look for any opportunity to lift yourself out of that suffering condition in the ocean of material existence. So the devotee is looking at this information, looking for guidance, going to senior devotees, looking for guidance, and in some cases being able to directly speak to the spiritual master for guidance. Frivolous questions, sometimes Srila Prabhupada would chastise the devotees. Why are you asking that question? Don't you read my books? Don't you understand? Don't just ask questions to be asking questions, but to really solidify your understanding. So in that way, this heart knot, which will be described as a weakness of heart, will be gradually removed by this process. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, text 9, Yagartha kamanonyatra lokoyam karma bandhana, tarartam karma konteya mukta sangha samachara. Well, we have a devotee in Philly, Mukta Sangha, very interesting. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. So this is the point where we're bound up. Why are we bound up in this material world? In this banyan tree, which is described Here we'll read some from the 15th chapter, which is called Purushottam Yoga. So we're bound up because of these fruitive activities, trying to enjoy things for ourselves. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. And in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. So this is what's being discussed in the purport for today. Fruitive work, which has perpetually engaged the living being is compared to the banyan tree in the Bhagavad Gita, for it is certainly very deeply rooted. As long as the propensity for enjoying the fruit of work is there, one has to continue the transmigration of the soul from one body or one place to another. So that is the cause of our situation, is that we're trying to enjoy the fruits of our work. Sometimes devotees become very, very confused about how to do that, how to balance that, how to go to work, or how is my work pleasing to Krishna. Now, it may be that the particular thing that you do is not necessarily pleasing. I mean, not every job that every devotee has is very pleasing, but it might just be the thing that they're qualified to do, or the thing that maintains their family, so on and so forth. So then how do we do that? How do we spiritualize that? So the term Srila Prabhupada always uses is dovetail. If we dovetail the activities with devotional service or with Krishna. So we're doing that work, whatever we're qualified to do, and we're taking the results of that work to whatever extent that we can, and we engage that in the service of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada has arranged our temples in such a way that we can all give from the fruits of our labor for the support of the temple and the worship of the deity and for preaching and book distribution like that. But the particular thing that you're doing may or may not be pleasing to you, and it may or may not be the most wonderful job or whatever it might be. So, but as long as we're taking the results of that and offering it to Krishna, that work now becomes spiritualized, whatever it might be. Now, of course, there are some limits. If someone is a butcher and they come to Krishna consciousness, and that's the job that they initially have, and then how do you spiritualize that? More than likely, they'll try to find some way to find some other type of work, because it's very hellish. It's not a very conducive environment. Even if you can take the results of that work and give to Krishna, that environment is not conducive. So devotees should be careful about various environments that may not be conducive for their spiritual life, and think, how can I improve my situation so I can think of Krishna more? For instance, in the society now, because of the effects of COVID, many people were not working. So they have a debate about why people are not going back to work. Are they just lazy? But the people who analyze this carefully and who have done the research, they've come to find that people are refiguring their lives. They don't want to go back to the same job that they had that was not giving them any satisfaction. They're re-engineering their lives. They're getting more education so they can find something more satisfying, more suitable to their nature. So devotee is always thinking like that. How can I engage in activities that will support my Krishna consciousness? It may not always be possible, but at least we have to think like that. Because if we're thinking like that, Krishna is more inclined to help us find those solutions to our life's problems. So we don't want to remain entangled in this material situation. So the reference was given to Purushottam Yoga, which is, again, the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And at the end of that chapter, in the end of the last paragraph of the purport, while one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of the heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus, one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. So that falls into the category or the thinking of what is it, chapter 3, text 27, Prakriti Kriyamanani, Gunai Karmani Sarvasaha, Ahankar Vimudatma Karta Hamiti Manyate. So the bewildered spirit soul, who's under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself to be the doer. So we're bewildered. When we're thinking that we are the controller and we want to control material nature, we're just bewildered because we can't. Maya Jaksena Prakriti, Suyate Sacharacharam. Material nature works under the control of Krishna. The demigods work under the control of Krishna. Everything is acting and moving by Krishna's arrangement. Srila Prabhupada said that consciousness is Krishna consciousness. But we get distracted because we allow the false ego to influence our thinking. We think that I am in charge of this. I am doing that. I'm moving my hand right now. I'm so foolish. I think I'm doing that. Look at that. I have no idea how this is happening. I'm thinking it. I desire it. And by Krishna's arrangement, there it goes. But I can't describe to you everything that happens in this body. I saw yesterday they were saying it's like 600 or 800 bones in your body and so many muscles and all this. We're not consciously causing these things to happen, but because of the influence of Maya, Mahamaya, we think ourselves to be the doers of activities that are carried out by nature. So then the worst one is thinking ourselves to be the supreme. Srila Prabhupada also said this morning in his lecture that people are saying that you can become God or someone is God because they don't know the qualifications of God. Any fool, and Prabhupada would say, any damn fool can come along and say, I'm God. And you don't know how to challenge that because you have no idea what is God. You say God, but you have no idea what is God. So in reality, if we think carefully, philosophically, Krishna consciously, we can keep our minds under control. And then the intelligence, which is the form direction of the super soul, will give us the proper guidance. Because the mind is always thinking how to enjoy. The mind is looking at everything thinking, how can I enjoy this? And if that's the mood that you're in, the intelligence will be prone to give you directions how to do those things that you want to do. But if you're thinking with your mind, Bhajahuremana, if we're thinking with our mind in a Krishna conscious fashion, the intelligence will match with that and give us the proper understanding, because that's the super soul guiding us through the intelligence. That's in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Intelligence is the form, direction of the super soul. So if you want material guidance, you'll get that. If you want spiritual guidance, you'll get that. But you have to qualify yourself for spiritual guidance. And that's something we'll talk about in a minute. So you have to qualify yourself by virtue of your devotional service. And that devotional service should be done very, very nicely. As mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, Te sam satata yuktanam bhajitam priti purvakam. That we talk about it so much as bhajitam priti, this love that we should apply to our service. Prananjana charita bhakti vilochanena. When the eyes are smeared with the salve of love. These terms are always used to help us visualize. So bhajitam priti, we should smear our service with love. If we're charged with cleaning the temple, it should be done with love. Practically, tears should be coming from your eyes as you're doing that service. As Vishnu Gada sometimes talks about how we were trained to wash pots when we joined the movement. Excuse me. Especially in the quote unquote old days. It was an honor to be allowed in the kitchen. First of all, to be allowed in the kitchen. I know the first time, excuse me, when I was just a new bhakta and my senior godbrother, Kardama Muni Prabhu in Atlanta. I think Vishnu Gada, you may remember Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni was interesting, wonderful devotee. Two things I'll mention. When I first heard Srila Prabhupada chanting, because I'm a musician, I love music, I heard that voice in the harmonium, and I asked Kardama Muni, I said, who is that? He said, it's Prabhupada, the world's greatest musician. And that's what stuck in my mind to this day. Prabhupada is the world's greatest musician. But I was really not allowed to come in the kitchen because I was brand new. I didn't know what I was doing, didn't know this or that. So one day I ventured toward the kitchen and, oh my God, everything smells so wonderful. I said, wow, that smells so good. And Kardama Muni said, you idiot. You can't smell Krishna's offering. This is for Krishna, not for your sense gratification. So that's the benefit of having senior devotees there. They can guide you, sometimes a little heavy, but they can guide you on the right path. So gradually, we develop this understanding by the association of devotees. And we get free from this misunderstanding of ourselves being the enjoyer. We get free from this, I am the center of everything, by the association of devotees. So continuing with this purport. So that first fall down is thinking oneself the Lord of material nature. Thus one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. But again, going back to the point of loving service, service done with love. That's the training that I've received, and I'm sure most of you've heard that so many times. But when you're doing service, it should be done with love. Love means attention. If you love someone, you pay attention to that person. Srila Prabhupada also said that one of the symptoms of love is that you always want to talk about that person. Always. That's why pure devotees are who they are, because they love Krishna so much. They can't think of anything else to talk about. Therefore, they don't become bewildered thinking themselves to be the doer, because they're always talking about Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I challenge us. When I say us, I'm not talking at you saying you. I'm saying all of us. I challenge all of us on this call or wherever within this movement. How much do we really think about Krishna in the course of our day? And if we truly are developing this love for Krishna, it will be symptomized by us discussing Krishna in casual situations. Sometimes in casual situations, meaning you are not in the temple room, it's not a Bhagavatam class, it's not a Sunday feast. It's just, devotees meet each other here and there. And we start talking about various things. Like sometimes now devotees, it's incredible. One of the biggest conversations is anti-vaccine amongst devotees. I'm thinking, this is kind of weird. I mean, you may, believe in that, that's fine. But why would you waste that opportunity in the association of a devotee to have those kinds of questionable discussions? Some devotees on my Facebook page were sending all these different messages, and I just said, Prabhu, I don't want to hear this. And one of my dear godbrothers, he said, Prabhu, I'm so sorry. We should use this time to glorify Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. I said, yes, that's the purpose. So when we have those casual moments, it will test whether or not we're making advancement in Krishna consciousness as to whether we discuss Krishna or we discuss all mundane topics. And there's so many mundane topics we can talk about. But when we come together, take that opportunity to enhance each other's understanding of Krishna. As in Rupa Goswami telling us in the Upadeshamrita, the Vaishnavas should speak confidentially and listen confidentially. But what is that confidential hearing and speaking? I remember years ago, one of my senior godbrothers explained that so nicely. He said, doesn't mean speaking confidentially, doesn't mean telling something about another person you don't like to another devotee, as if this is confidential. So Prabhu, this is confidential, don't say anything. That may be confidential, but it's not confidential transcendental hearing. When you start to speak about the negative aspects of another devotee with a devotee, as if this is a way to make advancement. It's not. Be warned, it is not. When we have that opportunity to be in each other's association, we should try to help each other understand this Krishna consciousness. Whatever I'm understanding, I try to share with you. Whatever you're understanding, you try to share with me. Srila Prabhupada described it like we should be like scientists. And the scientists, they go into their different fields of research and they do all their research and experiments, and they come together in a conference and then they share their papers and their research. And Srila Prabhupada described it. This is the association of devotees, that we're all practicing. Like now is the month of Damodar Kartik. So we're all taking several vows that we're going to chant more rounds. I made a vow yesterday, so I'm going to read the Nectar Devotion, the whole book, because I was reading where Srila Prabhupada in 1972 in Vrindavan, he wanted to stay at Radha Damodar Temple. And he said in the morning, he said, in the evening, I will speak on Nectar Devotion. So I said, that's a nice meditation. Let me try and do that, So we take all these things and say, let me see how I can improve my devotional service. So then we start sharing with each other. I've been reading this and you were studying that, and we share back and forth like scientists. That is the association of devotees. The second weakness of the heart is that as one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature, he becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. And we all know how we understand that. Like, we're attached to our houses, we're attached to our cars, we're attached to our iPhones and iPads and iWatches and everything. And we all still, as devotees, we have some of these attachments. For instance, if someone takes one of those things away from you, you might become disturbed naturally, because you have to guard and protect your possessions. But the mentality is what the problem is. The act of doing what you have to do to be responsible, that's okay. But the mentality, the mindset, how you think of those things, that's the one you have to watch out for. Do your responsibilities for your family, but how much are you putting your mind to do that and forgetting Krishna? So again, I challenge all of us, how much do we really think about Krishna, and how much do we really share what we understand about Krishna with each other? The problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of the heart. So these are classified as weaknesses of the heart. Thinking myself to be the doer, thinking myself to be the Lord of material nature, that's a weakness. In this chapter, the first 5 verses, chapter meaning Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, which is considered Purushottam Yoga. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from these weaknesses of heart. And the rest of the chapter, from the 6th verse through the end, discusses Purushottam Yoga. So again, that's chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita, if you want to go back and look at that. So what I wanted to share with you real quick before we come to the question part of our discussion today is from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is something I go back to constantly. I mean, seriously, just constantly going back to this. Because we're talking about the association of devotees, which Srila Prabhupada mentions very carefully in the second part of the purport, how important that is. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, starting with text 16, this will help us, get a framework, a little deeper understanding. So hopefully we can have a little conversation. But more importantly, we can take away from this discussion something that we can implement. You may already be implementing this thought process, but it'll help reaffirm it, inspire it even more just by hearing it, by regular hearing and by association. These things become solidified. They become wisdom, and we apply that in every aspect of our life. So we leave this class or any class you attend and you go and you apply this information, you feel the results of that internally. So starting with verse 16 of the second chapter, first canto, and I'll skip the Sanskrit for now. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. So that's the first point. How do I get that inspiration to want to hear and chant and read more, study more? I just gave you an example. By associating with Srila Prabhupada yesterday morning, reading about his activities, I was inspired to say, let me go and read the Nectar Devotion. That's a big deal for me. I don't know about for you, but that's like, it's ecstatic. So I just started reading it yesterday, and I was reading it last night. I've read it several times, but it's just hearing Prabhupada say that he was going to speak on the Nectar Devotion in the evening at the Radha Damodar Temple in 1972 was just like a wave of bliss just went over me. Like, wow, let me follow in his footsteps like that. So by serving such devotees, as we all are trying to do in this movement, we first learn how to serve Srila Prabhupada and his mission through the association of devotees. Through understanding Srila Prabhupada, we understand that by serving each other, that's why we call each other Prabhu. Sometimes there's a question mark, should a man call a woman Prabhu? But we won't go down that road for today. But that concept of Prabhu means my master, and I'm prepared to serve you. Question may be, well, if a devotee is not on the highest standard, should you serve that devotee? There are ways that you can serve every devotee. We serve the mundane people outside the temple. We serve the quote unquote karmis. That term karmi, we throw it around, but we have to talk about that at a different time. But we serve mundane people, materialistic people. We serve them prashadam. We go up to them and humbly fold our hands and say, please, sir, take a book of this, that, and the other. But we can't serve each other, devotees who are trying to practice, even though we're not perfect. So there are ways we can serve each other in all circumstances. So keep that in mind. We can serve each other, even though that person may not be on the highest platform, like, as it says here, free from all vice. I think most of the people that we meet when we go out into the public are not free from all vice. No. But we find a way to entice them, to encourage them, to pray for them to understand what we're going to say. We should apply that same principle in dealing with each other. If I know that a devotee is not up to standard, I can pray for him. And guess what? Krishna will see, oh, this devotee is so merciful to the other devotee. He's praying for him. Let me bless both of them. So that's what happens in the association of devotees. And then we gain affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Wow. That's practical, isn't it? By serving the devotees, especially those who are free from all vice, we gain affinity. And then the next verse everyone knows, Srinivata Sokata Krishna, Punyashravana Kirtana. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is a Paramatma super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge, which comes from serving the devotees. The urge comes from serving the devotees, especially devotees who are free from all vice, the urge to hear the messages. And when you have that urge, Krishna, he says, the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. The messages themselves are virtuous. And then, Nasta Praisa Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. And loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So the last verse I want to share with you real quick from this segment of verses is Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, text 21. Thus, the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruitive actions is terminated when one sees itself as master. So this process can free us from this entanglement in the material world, this local yam karma bandhana, this banyan tree of deeply rooted desires. All of that can be effectively removed by association with devotees, serving the devotees, getting the inspiration to hear, hearing regularly, hearing attentively, and then gradually, over time, being patient, over time, material desires start to fall away one after the other. And one day, we'll be free from all these material desires. And then our performance of the simplest devotional service, because devotional service is not different from Krishna. So the performance of the simplest devotional service will give us full satisfaction, whether it's cleaning, cooking, preaching. Like in Atlanta, I'll finish with this one. When Srila Prabhupada was in Atlanta, someone asked a question, Srila Prabhupada, what pleases you the most? And this is true because the Matajis that I've talked to, my god sisters, they were like feeling very, kind of bad because they just said Prabhupada's going to say book distribution because all the Radha Damodar devotees were there. There was a ton of brahmacharis there, and they were just waiting for Prabhupada to say something like that. And the Matajis were kind of like in the back, oh, I know he's going to say that, and I just do deity worship. I just clean the temple like that. And Srila Prabhupada answered that question by saying, when they asked him, what pleases you the most, Srila Prabhupada? And Prabhupada looked around and he said, that you love Krishna. And the Matajis especially went crazy because they understood all of us can love Krishna. You don't have to be a book distributor. You don't have to be a temple president. You don't have to be a GBC. You don't have to be even a guru. You don't have to be anything. Just serve Krishna, bhajitam priti, with love, that you love Krishna. So let's keep that in our minds. That will germinate, that will grow, and it will destroy all these attachments over time. So I'll stop there. Hopefully someone has a comment or a question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
All
Shamaya Bez all glory to Prabhupada.
glories to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhuji, I just wanted to bring out one point from the purport.
Sure, go ahead.
When it says that we seek the association of devotees, the pure devotees, there Srila Prabhupada qualifies who is a pure devotee.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who is learned, who is self-realized, and who has unalloyed devotional service for Krishna.
Mm.
So when we take association of devotees, my understanding is because ultimately this association with the pure devotee is, and then association means you actually render a loving service to them both physically and mentally.
Mm.
And when we do that, that will induce these great souls to become favorable to us and bestow mercy on us. And it is that mercy which is, injecting us with transcendental qualities.
Yes.
And then gradually we are making progress. So even when we associate with devotees, as you said, we are being nice to people outside the world, we should also be nice to devotees. I feel that here the association, what is being talked about is with the pure devotee, like when we associate with Srila Prabhupada, with the Acharyas. And our association with other devotees should be based on our relationship with this pure devotee. So when I'm being nice to devotees, it is in order to please as a service to the pure devotee. As my relationship with the pure devotee, I'm trying to serve the other devotees. And then when the pure devotee becomes pleased with me, then I start making progress because it is he who has all those transcendental qualities. And then he can, transfer those qualities to me. I thought I'll just share that. That's my understanding.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. So let's peel it open a little bit more and look at it, because the majority of our association is with other devotees. It's not with the spiritual master. Like I was able to see Srila Prabhupada a total of probably 50 days if I put it all together. I saw him in Chicago, I saw him in Atlanta, I saw him in Philadelphia, and I saw him in India. I saw him every day for about, I think it was over 30 days we were there for the festival. So I calculated, it's about 50 days that I personally saw him. But I didn't get a chance to ask a single question out of all those 50 days and out of all my years in the movement. So my association was with, when I first came, devotees who were probably not the most advanced. In fact, I remember one brahmachari, he asked me one day, he said, Prabhu, this Mataji, she comes to the temple. I hear some sound in the background. I can't tell which one it is. Yeah. So he said, this Mataji, she's always after me. And this is a brahmachari. Oh, she's after me and this and that and da 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 da. So those are the kind of devotees that I was associating with. But guess what? They were guiding me. Apart from their limitations, their attachments, they had an understanding of the philosophy, and they were guiding me in Krishna consciousness. So my point there is that Prabhupada had enough faith, even in his neophyte devotees, because the majority of us were neophyte devotees, probably still to this day, we're trying to get out of being neophyte devotees. But we had strong faith, almost Majjhima, maybe not exactly Majjhima yet, but strong faith in Srila Prabhupada, enough to bring another devotee along the path. So those devotees who were bringing us on the path, although they may not be pure devotees, but Prabhupada, you know what Prabhupada said? All my disciples are pure devotees. He made that statement. He declared that. Why? Because they're serving. They're trying to serve. And what is the verse? I can't think of the number. Apichet Sudaracharo. Who knows that verse? Because I can't remember the entire verse.
Apichet Suduracharo bhajate mamananyabhag sadhureva samantavya.
Okay, stop right there. So what is that sadhureva? What does that mean? He is rightly situated. He's situated. So those neophyte devotees, which the majority of us are, at least when we first come, we're rightly situated. Are we qualified now to help another devotee? And that exchange of service between two neophyte devotees, is there any value there? Absolutely. That's my understanding. Absolutely. So if I appreciate and serve my God brothers, God sisters, next generation, all of that stuff, and not look and see who is a pure devotee, who's not a pure devotee, but also being, intelligent. If If someone calls himself a devotee and they're drinking alcohol, am I going to spend time with that person? Probably not. Will I pray for them? Definitely. Absolutely. But I won't spend intimate time with that person. Nor will I, yes, I will try to serve that person. How? Give them prasadam. Give them, encourage them, inspire them the best that you can. So my point, Mataji, is that the gold standard is to associate with devotees who are free from all vice, as in verse that we just read from the Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, text 16. But the reality is that we are all on different levels. And Srila Prabhupada would, as you said, to please Srila Prabhupada, we should try to serve all the devotees. Second class devotee, he's very merciful to those who are under him, say neophytes and others. First class devotee, because we're trying to come to that first class platform. The first class devotee doesn't see any distinction. Am I correct? None.
Yeah.
The first class devotee sees everyone is a better devotee than me. So we just have to be careful in applying that principle of who to associate with, who to serve, because that's why I gave the example that we serve people outside the movement. So we should try to serve everyone with Krishna consciousness. That's pleasing to Prabhupada. So I gave the example. Prabhupada said, what pleased him the most was that you love Krishna. And if you love Krishna, love me, love my dog. You've heard that example Prabhupada gives it. Love me, love my dog. In fact, people, when they come to someone's house and the person has a dog, I don't particularly like being with dogs that much, but generally when someone comes to the house and there's a dog, they kind of coochie-coo to the dog to please the owner of the house. So love me, love my dog. So if we love Krishna, when Prabhupada said, what pleases me the most is that you love Krishna, then you got to love all his parts and parcels. Mamaya Vamsa Jiva Loke, all of this, everyone is Krishna's part and parcel. Everyone is our sister and brother. So I just say that the safest path is to try to give Krishna consciousness to everyone, whether they're a neophyte devotee, whether they're a materialistic person, doesn't matter. Just as Lord Chaitanya says, what is that verse? Yare deke taha kaha Krishna upadesh. Just give this Krishna upadesh to everyone. So that's my humble thought. So thank you for your comments. Very nicely appreciated.
Hare Krishna.
Drona, I see your hands up.
Hi, Krishna Balabhadra, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
I thought your hand was there to slap me in the face. I didn't know.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Thank you so much for such a wonderful class and so many important practical points. I wanted to see if advice that you can give us on. Well, let me first start by saying that you mentioned that when we're cleaning the temple room, we should actually get to the point where we have tears in our eyes coming, that we're actually feeling ecstasy and love of God while we're doing it. So because of our conditioned nature, oftentimes we differentiate or put certain values to particular services.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's where we kind of come from in the material world. We got a particular job. The highest rank is, some type of, management position or ownership. And the entry-level jobs are usually, you look around and see the cleaners and things like that. So sometimes we may bring that type of mentality where we want to have maybe a prestigious position in devotional life as opposed to a materially prestigious position as opposed to, and we get a little mixed up there where one may think, well, I'm a cook, I'm not a pot washer, or I'm a pujari, I'm not going to clean the carpet, or, don't ask me to clean, but if you ask me to give class, I'll do that. What advice would you give to prevent us from differentiating between, bringing our material values of work and service into the spiritual realm?
Well, you have a nice example. Don't mean to put him on the spot, but Vishnu Prabhu is a PhD. You know that, right? But where do you see him mostly? In the kitchen, cooking and working with devotees and humbly doing that service. He's always been that way. I've known him for many years. So there is no difference. Prabhupada, and he said, he called him, someone's thinking he's a cooker. He used that phrase. He's a cooker and he's a cleanser. He used those two phrases, cooker and cleanser. There's no difference. I was so fortunate to be sitting in front of Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan in the Krishna Balaram Temple in 1976 when he gave this lecture. And he said specifically, I can't remember the exact wording, but this is paraphrased to the best of my memory. It is in, you can find it in the folio. He said, someone is thinking, here is Krishna on the altar, but he doesn't understand, here is Krishna in the floor. So he's giving more preference on the altar, like the neophyte devotee sees Krishna on the altar. The more advanced devotee sees Krishna everywhere. So Prabhupada was saying like that. When you cleanse this floor, this is not different from Krishna because it's being used in Krishna's service. It's like Lord Balaram. When you're bathing Lord Balaram on the altar, you know, you're taking care of the deity so carefully. And when the floor, you kind of like casually, yeah, leave some dust over here. I was trained, in fact, the best training I got was from a Bengali devotee who was very junior to me. He taught me his mother's system. Because, you know, in India, they have these little straw brooms. You know what I'm talking about, the little straw brooms? So he showed me how to use that broom. And then he showed me another step, which is even more important. Take your hand and pull the dust into a little pile like that, and then throw it out. And Prabhu, when I clean, that's exactly what I do to this day. Because those little pieces of dust and straw, like Lord Chaitanya cleansing the Gundicha temple, come on. The Lord himself is cleansing the temple. Why would we not take the opportunity to follow the example of the Lord and let our minds tell us, oh, that's below me. I'm a PhD. I'm a this or that. I'm a Brahmana. I can't touch this. Some of the most wonderful cleansing experiences I've had were cleaning the temple bathrooms, because that's a challenge. I taught this young devotee, he was a Gujarati boy, very nice boy. I taught him how to clean the guest room bathroom in the Atlanta temple. How did I teach him? I got down and showed him that you have to go behind the toilet and clean all those corners. You know where I learned that? I learned it on the altar, serving Gauni Thai. I would crawl under their altar all the way to the little corners and bring out all the little dust and dirt. It was amazing how wonderful that is. So all I'm saying is that Bhajitam Priti Purvakam, whatever service you are allowed to do, stop thinking you're qualified. Nice. I'm not saying you do, I'm just saying in general. We should stop thinking about our mundane qualifications and thinking that is what allows me to do this or that. So we should take every opportunity that we are blessed to have in this human life. We're alive right now. We have a chance to serve Krishna, and we're given a service, whether it's cleaning, cooking, pujari, whatever it might be, and we don't apply Bhajitam Priti Purvakam, that is our own fault. We will not get the ecstasy from that service. It'll take a long time if we don't take the right attitude. So it's called the paradigm shift, as we've heard that phrase so many times, how you look at life. So now you apply, this is what will protect you. You apply what Srila Prabhupada says about these things. I just gave you a couple direct examples. Clean the floor as if you were taking care of the deities on the altar in the temple. So important. And you'll get that transcendental exchange. Bhajitam Priti Purvakam, applied in every service circumstance, will bring about the desired result. So I hope that answered a little bit of your question.
Yes, very much so. Thank you for
Thank you. For,
that.
it was interesting. One time, Prahlada Nandamars was giving class in Atlanta, Bhagavad Gita class. So this wonderful devotee, he asked Maharaj, doesn't it take really good organization to make sure the temple is clean? And because he was trying to get at the temple president. So he said, doesn't it take good organization? And Prahlada Nanda Swami said, how much organization does it take for you to pick up a broom and sweep? And the room was like, oops. Because he's talking about the others should be doing this. And Maharaj says, how much organization does it take for you to pick up the broom and sweep? And I learned a big lesson when I heard that. It was very, very powerful response, you know. Thank you. Anyone else?
Krishna
Vishnu Gada.
Prabhu.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Haribol, Prabhuji.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things.
Yes.
One thing is that when Srila Prabhupada would go to temples, quite often he would, take a tour of the buildings, and he would often find the place where devotees didn't clean. And there's quite a few stories about that. That Srila Prabhupada had he knew, he would open a door, and then there was not always, but so the point being that all the different parts of the temple are Krishna's, and we want to. So yeah, and so in the old days also, when there would be usually a Maha cleanup. You remember this stuff about once a month or once a week.
Yeah.
And then after the Maha cleanup in the temple, oftentimes they would take the small deities, the Vijay Vigraha deities,
Wow.
and go around to the different areas of the temple to purify them and to give Lord Krishna, this is his place, right? So that was some kind of a practical thing. And I know in Philadelphia at different times we've had like monthly Maha cleanups and stuff like that. It hasn't been very well attended. I usually try to attend, and you mentioned something about I wash pots and stuff. Okay, but the reason I do is because I know that if I don't do that, that I'm going to be going to have a material mentality. Or somebody else is going to do it. I'm an old guy,
right.
so I don't have to. I can get away with not doing it. But no, otherwise, if I don't do it, I'm going to become materially attached, and so the way I understand the difference between Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, of course, there's different aspects of it. But one aspect of Karma Yoga that Srila Prabhupada mentions is that a person in Karma Yoga is attached to a particular kind of work. So as you were saying, it could say, I'm an architect. I'm not going to dance in front of the deities. I mean, hey, that's kind of what fanatics do. Or I'm a doctor. I'm not going to wash pots or clean the floor. All these things. So whereas a Vaishnava, whatever Krishna wants, whatever the spiritual master wants, I'm ready to do, whatever it might be. Shri Vigrahara Adhana Nityanana Srinigara Mandira Marjanado, anything, whatever it might be. And some of those things I'm asked to do, I'm not very good at, or I have no talent at, but still I'll do the best as I can, just because I know that it's for my purification and to please the Krishna and my Guru. So those are just some thoughts I had.
Oh, you almost brought me to tears because you made me think of Sadaputta Prabhu. Sadaputta Prabhu is one of the most brilliant, not just devotees in the movement, one of the most brilliant people I've ever met, period. I mean, I miss his association, but he was Bhakta Richard under me. So he was Bhakta Richard in Atlanta. And I had no idea of his educational background because he never showed it or expressed it. So I was in charge of him. I said, Bhakta Richard, go do this. And he said, yes, Prabhu. And I remember one time, Dr. Richard, idiot, this, that, and the other. Because sometimes in the old days, we call each other idiot and all that kind of stuff. But he never complained. He always, and then you mentioned about dancing. When you see him dance, it's like seeing Lord Chaitanya. It's amazing how he would dance. PhD, scientist, highly respected. And then one day a devotee said, Prabhu, don't you know Dr. Richard's a PhD? I went, Dr. Richard's a PhD? That guy? No. He was the sweetest person. I could not believe how humble he was and how much he really understood the importance of what you just said about any service he would do. And then one last thought is my older god brother, Jayasena Prabhu. He passed away some years ago. He told me in the beginning, I was a bhakta. He said, and it may not be 100% philosophically structured, but he said, you do what Krishna wants you to do now, and then at some point, Krishna will allow you to do things that you would like to do for him. Whatever Krishna wants you to do, you just do that. And then later, as you become more advanced, Krishna may allow you to do the things you want to do. So for me, that came true because I'm a musician. I came as a musician. I made it known on my little application. I'm a musician. And then a few years later, I was asked to do music, and I've been doing it since 1975. The thing I really wanted to do, Krishna allowed me to do when I surrendered to do what needed to be done for Krishna under the guidance of devotees. So thank you, Vishnu Prabhu. Jonah, back to you.
Any last questions before we close?
No comment, Hariyash. I see you in the dark over there.
You're on mute, Hariyash.
We see your lips moving, but there you go.
It's difficult to comment when you come late in class, you know, but you're always speaking very sweetly, you know. One thing I was thinking about was, you know, this type of discrimination, it changes automatically. A lot of times we can't, you know, so much tell a person, but we can tell them about the process. And the process is so sweet that we begin to change. That's the whole point of it. We lose this so-called discriminating against this and that, because we just begin to want to please the spiritual master. We begin to see Krishna, the importance of doing Krishna's work. It begins to change. And it doesn't, we don't have to wait to become pure devotees. It even, you know, I remember I didn't want to do anything. I was in the kitchen, and one of your godbrothers, Rishikesh, he asked me to do the pots. I said, sure. And I went in the kitchen to do the pots. And then I left. And he said, Dr. Howard, you know, Rishikesh is looking for you in the kitchen. So what? He said he wanted you to do pots. I said, well, I did them. He said, well, there's more to do. I said, oh, I didn't want to do it anymore. I said, I did what I wanted to do, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And I went and saw him, and I told him that, looked him right in the eye. And he was so thrown back that I would just say such a thing. But that's the way I thought. I was like, I don't want to do it anymore. But then later, even, you know, when you see the devotees expect things, or devotees can need help, even before we become so, you know, so-called thinking that we're going to get pure. The process is that the association, we begin to change.
Yes.
We say, well,
yes,
you know,
Very
Krishna
nice.
consciousness is powerful.
Beautiful, beautiful. And one last little anecdote is that Hridayananda Maharaj one time, he said that if someone comes to the temple and they say, oh, I have a PhD, and then he would say, oh, nice, Prabhu, here are the pots. Here are the pots. PhD, fine, you're qualified. Here are the pots. So I think everybody on this call, Drona, you're going to have a whole line of devotees trying to get in the kitchen to wash the pots.
That would be fabulous.
Thank you so much, Haribo.
Hare Krishna, thank you to all the devotees for coming today to the Srimad Bhagavatam class. Just a reminder that this evening, we have our Srila Prabhupada Leela study starting at 7 o'clock tonight. Also, we have Shloka learning as well, starting at 6:40 tonight on the same Zoom channel. Hope you all have a wonderful Krishna conscious day and a wonderful month of Kartik.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
In
the evening at 7 o'clock, I'll just mention it once again. 6:30 we have the Artik and Kirtan at the temple, and then following that, roughly about 7 o'clock, we have the Damodarastika prayers, and you can offer candles to Lord Damodar at that time.
Haribo. All glory
Hare
to
Krishna.
Prabhupada.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Vachakopa
Thank you very much for
Tudubhishya, Kripasindu
Bhagavad
Devasya,
Gita.
Patitanam Pavanebhyo,
Hare
Vaishnavebhyo
Krishna.
Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Prabhu.
Balabhadra
Thank you very
Prabhu.
much.
Hare Krishna.